It started in a quiet Midwestern suburb, the kind of American town that could have been pulled straight from a postcard. Tree-lined streets, manicured lawns, the distant hum of lawnmowers on Saturday mornings. People waved when they passed each other in cars. Kids played basketball in driveways until the streetlights flickered on. And no one ever locked their doors at night because there was no reason to. To anyone looking in, it was ordinary, safe, predictable. But behind that polished surface, behind the friendly smiles and the neighborhood cookouts, was a story of betrayal and revenge that no one could have ever imagined. This is the story of Michael Harris, a man who was never famous, never flashy, never the center of attention, and yet, whose name, whispered in certain circles, has become synonymous with one of the most patient and devastating acts of personal justice in American history. Michael Harris wasn't the sort of person who stood out. He was the neighbor you nodded to when you picked up your morning paper, the dad who never missed his son's baseball games, the husband who fixed things around the house without being asked. At work, he was reliable. At home, he was steady. In his community, he was respected, if not exactly celebrated. Dependable, loyal, honest. Those were the words people used to describe him. If your car broke down in the middle of winter, Michael would be there with jumper cables before you even asked. If you needed to borrow a tool, his garage was always open. He was the kind of man who gave more than he took, who kept his promises, who believed that loyalty wasn't just something you said. It was something you lived. And that's exactly why his friendship with Ethan Cole seemed so perfect. Ethan was the opposite of Michael in almost every way. Where Michael was steady, Ethan was electric. Charismatic, confident, a natural storyteller who could walk into any room and instantly command attention. He was the guy everyone wanted to be around, quick with a joke, bold with ideas, and always ready for the next big thing. Michael admired him. Their wives got along, their kids played together, and soon the two men were spending nearly every weekend side by side. They were inseparable. Michael brought loyalty. Ethan brought energy. And together it felt like they could conquer anything. When Ethan pitched business ideas, Michael listened. When Ethan spoke of opportunities, Michael trusted him. They weren't just friends. They were brothers in all but blood. At least that's what Michael believed. It started small. A few investments here, a can't-miss opportunity there. Ethan's charm was disarming, his confidence contagious. "Trust me, Mike," he'd say with that easy grin, and Michael always did. For years, everything seemed fine. Michael believed his friend was building something for their future, for both of their families. But then cracks began to show. Missing money, strange explanations, whispers in the community that Michael, not Ethan, was involved in shady deals. First, Michael brushed it off. He told himself there had to be a mistake, that Ethan would explain it all. But the explanations never came. And then, just like that, Ethan vanished. The money was gone. The investments were gone. And worse, Michael's reputation was in ruins. Friends stopped calling. Business partners distanced themselves. Even his wife, Emily, looked at him with unspoken questions in her eyes. The man Michael trusted most had gutted not just his bank account, but his good name. At first, Michael was consumed with rage. He wanted to scream, to fight, to confront Ethan face to face. But deep down, he knew anger would only destroy what little he had left. So he did the unthinkable. He buried it. He went quiet. And in that quiet, a seed was planted. Michael began to realize something most people never understand. Revenge doesn't have to be loud or messy or immediate. The most effective revenge is invisible, patient, carefully constructed over years, until the moment comes when it can no longer be stopped. To the world, Michael looked like a broken man. His neighbors whispered that he had never recovered. Old friends avoided him. Emily, his wife, grew worried as he spent long nights scribbling notes, staring at his computer screen, or sitting silently at the dinner table. To her, it looked like obsession. To him, it was clarity. Because in Michael's mind, every sleepless night, Every quiet walk, every empty stare. They were all part of something greater. He wasn't giving up. He was planning. While Ethan reinvented himself, Michael tracked him. Not directly, never in a way that would raise suspicion. Instead, he gathered fragments, puzzle pieces that no one else noticed. Property records, court filings, tax documents, names of associates, addresses, business deals. Year by year, Michael built a private archive. And what he discovered was damning. Ethan wasn't just a con artist who had betrayed him. He was a pattern. Wherever Ethan went, he left wreckage behind. Broken deals, unpaid debts, and enemies too tired to fight back. But Michael wasn't tired. He was patient. And he knew one thing with certainty. Ethan's downfall was inevitable. All Michael had to do was wait for the perfect moment to guide it into motion. Over the years, Ethan rose higher than Michael could have imagined. He became a real estate mogul, a philanthropist, and eventually a political donor. He threw extravagant parties, posed for glossy magazine covers, and smiled for the cameras. To the world, he was untouchable. But the higher you climb, the harder you fall. And Michael was waiting for gravity to do its work. Nearly 20 years after the betrayal, Michael made his move. It began with whispers, anonymous tips, carefully planted documents, quiet nudges to the right people. Journalists, accountants, lawyers. He never revealed too much at once. Just enough to plant seeds of doubt, to let suspicion grow naturally. A discrepancy here, a shady contract there. Soon, Ethan's empire had cracks that no one could ignore. And then the articles started. Small at first. Local outlets questioning Ethan's past. But soon, bigger papers picked it up. Investors backed out. Political allies distanced themselves. Ethan tried to charm his way out, but the walls were closing in. And Michael? He watched silently, patiently, as the storm gathered. Cornered, Ethan did what men like him always do. He doubled down. He hosted flashy events, announced bold new ventures, smiled on stage in $1,000 suits as if nothing was wrong. But behind the scenes, desperation was eating him alive. He shifted money through shell companies, created fake contracts, pressured allies into silence. Every move left a trail, and Michael was already watching. With 2 decades of evidence, and Ethan's panicked mistakes fresh on paper, Michael's case was airtight. Fraud, embezzlement, tax evasion, crimes that no amount of charm could erase. Michael carefully packaged it all and delivered it, anonymously, to the right hands. Journalists, federal investigators, state prosecutors. The result was immediate. Raids, headlines, arrest warrants, cameras flashing as Ethan Cole, once hailed as a visionary, was led away in handcuffs. His empire collapsed overnight. His reputation destroyed. His friends scattered. Even his family turned away. And the cruelest part? Ethan never knew who was behind it. To him, it was bad luck. Fate. Maybe just his past catching up. He never once suspected that the quiet man he betrayed 2 decades earlier had orchestrated every step of his downfall. Michael didn't celebrate. He didn't confess. Not to Emily, not to his children, not to anyone. He closed the folder where Ethan's name had lived for 20 years and put it away. His work was done. But victory came with a cost. For 2 decades, Michael had lived for one purpose: revenge. It had stolen his sleep, strained his marriage, and distanced him from his children. When it was over, he was left with silence. A silence that was no longer heavy with plans, but empty. He had won, yes, but could any victory ever give him back the years he lost? Michael lived the rest of his life quietly, never speaking of Ethan again. He carried the secret with him until his final breath. A secret that defined him, haunted him, and, in its own strange way, completed him. The story of Michael Harris isn't just about betrayal and revenge. It's a question that lingers long after the last page is turned. Some will say yes, that justice delayed is still justice served. that Michael delivered a kind of punishment the system never could. Others will argue that he wasted his life on bitterness, that by destroying Ethan, he destroyed parts of himself as well. Perhaps the truth lies somewhere in between. Revenge doesn't heal. It doesn't rebuild. But for some men, it is the only answer they can live with. So I'll ask you, was Michael Harris justified? Or did his revenge cost him too much? Let me know your thoughts in the comments below. And if you found this story gripping, hit like, subscribe, and stay tuned. Because sometimes, the quietest storms are the most devastating.